Hi, I'm Chad Hennings, and this is Forces of Character podcast. I'm excited for my guest that we're going to have a conversation with today, Lisa Atherton. Lisa is the CEO of Bell Flight. She has gone and been able to accomplish so many different things in her life that she went from being a business development manager at Textron Systems to now CEO of Bell Flight. Quite the accomplishment. But more importantly, she's an expert and very passionate about building culture. You're going to learn a lot from her today. So let's welcome Lisa. Lisa,
thanks for having me, Chad. We're going to have a lot of fun.
We're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being here and taking the time out for this. We share something in common, both former athletes, attended the Air Force Academy, but you've had to overcome some adversity in your life, early in your life.
Yeah.
And for a lot of our guests, we want to understand, kind of where you came from, kind of the influences that you've had. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Not the beginning of time, but beginning of your life.
Yeah.
Where'd you grow up, and kind of who are the influences, coaches, parents, etc., early on in your life?
So I was born in Zephyrhills, Florida. I started playing basketball early on. Our coaching staff there really took the time when we were little kids to say we need to develop a pipeline of talent because they believed they wanted to create women's basketball as being preeminent at Zephyrhills High School, which was really ahead of its time in the 80s. And so there were some coaches there. Coach Pittman put together the STARS group and taught us how to play. So from fourth grade on, man, I wanted to be a baller. And so we would spend time on Saturday mornings. We learned the Pistol Pete Maravich, how to shoot the gooseneck. So just a lot of investment in young girls at that time. And a couple of lessons I took from that, we can talk about it later, but how developing talent and pipeline is really critical if you want to create something long term. And so Pittman took us all the way through in high school. We went to the state finals, didn't get all the way to get the hardware there. But my junior year at practice, a girl was coming in. I was gonna not let her take the basket, so I held my ground, and she went right through and tore my ACL in practice. So set me back a little bit, but I had to work hard to kind of create a future with that. So.
Talk a little bit about that. One of the things, my daughter had a similar experience coming up through high school. And for her, she had a struggle. There was a lot of emotional aspects from that. Tell me a little bit about that experience, and what did you learn about yourself and having to overcome that adversity?
Yeah, I really thought that it was over, right? I mean, everything is really magnified at that age anyway. So I just thought that I'd never be able to play ball again. I'd never have the opportunity to go play at the college level, which is what I really wanted to be able to do. And there was an orthopedic surgeon who had been trained at the University of Florida that said he wanted to try some experimental surgery on me and that it would get me back on the court faster. And so my parents agreed, and it was the first time that they had taken an Achilles tendon from a cadaver and strung that through my ACL. And so with that plus PT, I was back playing AAU ball. At that time, it would have been record time in about 3.5 months after
Really?
AC. Yeah. So, I mean, I had the giant brace and everything on, but it was 3 days a week. My parents let me drive. I would never let my kid do this now, but I left Zephyrhills, which is Central Florida. I would drive to Clearwater Beach 3 days a week to go rehab with this guy in order to get myself back in shape to get back on the court after having major, they just kind of open your knee up surgery. So. It was pretty revolutionary at the time, but it had me back doing what I wanted to do.
So what did you learn about yourself in that aspect?
Look, you had dedication, right? You can't just have something like that and then not put in the work afterwards. So, we had this kind of revolutionary surgery, but if I had said, I don't want to drive an hour and 20 minutes every day to go over and get some more. And when I was there, you had to work hard. I had to rebuild all this muscle memory around my knee in order to be able to be out there on the court. Grit is a characteristic that I use a lot in my business life now. I believe grit happens, and so you got to be able to push through that. And you can't be born with grit. You got to go through something in order to earn that grit. And I think that was my first taste of that. I could sit there and say, "Woe is me? Why me?" But no, I mean, it with support from a lot of people. I had to push through, and I was determined that going through that, I wasn't going to miss out on getting to play at the next level.
Well, I sometimes think when people have to go through that, they're faced at that crossroads. Some people choose apathy, check out. Some people choose what you did to bear down, to get better. I mean, I'm just rhetorical. I just wonder what is in us that causes us to want to do that.
Creates that drive?
Creates that drive.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Is it something you're born with, or is it something you develop? I think if you take it back to like in fourth grade of kind of having that seed planted in me of a goal, and that belief that you want to have that goal, if that seed is so strong, you're not going to want to walk away from that. I mean, you just got to have that, and that came from somebody giving you a gift, right? The believing in you, speaking life into you. But
Is that
really,
through your parents and
my
your coaches?
My parents, my coaches, my youth pastor, and I mean, just this belief that you could go do something. And I know we'll probably get to what does it mean as a kind of one of the few women in this field, but back then, I mean, I was the only girl that would go out and play ball with the boys. I mean, I just really wanted to get out there and prove myself. I had a kid tell me, I played soccer, which is not my sport. It's a lot of running. But he told me, he's like, girls can't play soccer. So I slide tackled him. I mean, it just is like, you
Challenge
just, tell me
on.
I can't. And we're going to go get after this. So I do think people are wired a little bit differently. You can have people that respond to the negative, right? Tell me I can't, I'll show you I can. But then you've also got people that don't respond to that. They respond to encouragement. And so when I deal with teams and when I deal with building up, groups, you got to find out how people are motivated, because not everybody's motivated with the, prove me wrong type DNA. But some people are motivated with, hey, I believe in you. I know you can do this, and I'm going to help you get there. So you got to figure out what people you're working with and just help them rise to their best.
I totally agree. A lot of the research that I've done, that we are who we are since we're like a year and a half old. I mean, God wired us specifically how you are, how you communicate, how you process information, how you, think through things, how much information you need to make a decision. But what is up to us is that aspect of mindset.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Carol Dweck with the fixed mindset versus growth mindset.
Yeah.
Those with the fixed mindset are probably those that, well, I'm done.
Yep.
It's as good as I'm going to get, versus those with the growth mindset say, I can always improve. I can get better. I may not be the best, but I can improve my skill set.
Yeah, my parents were that way. I mean, my mom, she was, the entire time we were growing up, she was trying to get her degree. It took her 16 years to get her 2-year associate's degree, and then she went on to go full-time to school when I was in high school. So I was 16 when I watched her walk across the stage with her undergraduate degree, and that tenacity and that, and she would take a class and then she'd go work at the shoe store in order to make money for the family, or my parents just had this way about, they never asked for anything. We lived in a single wide trailer while our house was being built, me and my brother with 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, and they built every brick on I just remember this as I was reflecting on this the other day. Just that, they saw a goal, they worked at it, they didn't ask for any handouts, they just kind of went after it, and then we had this beautiful home that they built for us. And so it's kind of I guess a little bit of a metaphor for how you should live. Just get after it.
Amen. Well, we have another thing in common. My mom went back and got her degree. She graduated from college the same year I graduated from high school.
Is that right?
So I got to see her do the same thing. And she's my hero in that regard. Just the tenacity and the grit. It was modeled for us.
Yeah, it's modeled.
Okay. You had that setback junior year.
Yeah.
You worked back. You came on strong.
Yeah.
Your senior year proved to yourself that you could do it. But some of those other colleges that were interested in you, were recruiting you, went wayward.
Yeah.
Who stuck with you?
Air Force.
There we go.
Yeah, they did. And we had a local liaison officer that I had to go get medical waivers in order to be allowed to come because of the torn ACL. And so he went and gathered a bunch of data for us, really, really helped me put together a package to go before the medical review board to get through. The basketball coach at the time, Marty Gasser, she advocated for me to come out there and play. And so I got my dream to be able to go out there. And I say all the time, basketball was an avenue that I thought was the pinnacle of what I wanted to achieve. But it really it opened a door for me to be able to understand a life of service that I didn't really understand until I got to the Air Force Academy. I had no concept of the history of our country and what was fought for and why we were able to have the freedoms we have today. And so while not knowing, right, take it all the way back to that coach saying, hey, in 4th grade, I'm gonna teach you how to dribble. What that journey, what the doors were opened, I call it proof points from God all the time. I mean, those proof points that he put into my path to allow me that opportunity to understand and then lead to today, it's really kind of interesting.
That's why, at the Service Academies, athletics is one of the, 4 pillars with them. And I say that athletics, I always say football. We'll take basketball in this case. Is truly one of the best leadership laboratories.
It is.
I mean, look at those lessons in life that you learned that have set you up to where you are today. Yeah. And it's not a destination, it was always a journey.
Always a journey. I
appreciate that.
Still is.
Yeah, it's not over till it's over.
Yeah.
Okay, you're at the Air Force Academy, going through basic.
Yep.
What happens?
Rip it again. So, those confidence courses, assault courses. So I toured it again and ended up in the hospital. But I actually had a doctor pull me aside and say, hey, if this is you just need to go home, and we didn't call it washout, but he was just like, don't you worry, I'll write out the paperwork, we can send you home, you can hold your head high, And I was like, no, I want to finish. I want to finish basic training. I want to graduate, and get my, my shoulder boards and be a part of the cadet wing. And so they gave me some medicine and gave me a bigger brace. So I go back with my BDUs with a big old brace on my leg so that I could finish basic. And then I went back and had to have surgery after I finished basic training in order to be able to have it repaired. But
wow, so you truly cowboyed up.
Yeah, well, otherwise they said I wasn't going to be able to enter into the cadet wing if I didn't finish through basic training. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was, again, one of those crossroads. What do you want? And those days are long and hard, and it would have been easy just to go back home and say, okay, it didn't work out. I had a medical issue, but it was great.
So you make it to the wing. You're in your 4-degree year. You're still pursuing your dream of playing college basketball.
Yeah.
That didn't work out. How did you handle that experience? And I don't want to call it a setback, but just the pivot.
Yeah, it was disappointing that I just, and I actually, if I'm really honest with myself, look, I was a great ball player for Zephyr Hills High School. I was an okay ball player at the Air Force Academy. But the beauty of the Air Force and any of the service academies is once you're in, you're in. And I was able to embrace that, hey, okay, this is where I'm at this point. Look at this opportunity I've got ahead of me in order to graduate from one of the most elite schools, in the nation. And at Prague, if you guys, for those of you that don't know what Prague is, at kind of your midpoint in that first semester, they give you your grades. And today's kids, they can go on their app immediately and know exactly where their grades are. I had no idea. I know I wasn't doing great, but I had no idea. I had a 1.68 GPA at Prague my first semester at the academy. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm not cut out for this. I shouldn't be here. I called my parents. You get to walk down and get the payphone and call home for that one night of the week. And I'm crying. I'm like, my knees tore up, and I'm terrible at school. I'm just not made for this place. So they sent me a care package, which for most people, that's candy and cookies and stuff. And so I failed to mention that both my parents were math teachers at this point, and my dad was my principal at my high school. And so they're like, well, what's wrong? And I was like, well, I got placed in a Calc 3, and I don't know what to do here. And I got placed in a Mandarin, and that's kicking my butt. And I got placed in, I don't know what other classes were taking. And I said, I'm not smart enough for this place. And so they send me this care package. I get it back to my room. I open it up expecting, cookies and notes that say you're great. And my parents sent me math books to help me with I'm like, this is not helpful. I'm going to sleep on them, and they're going to, my dad's, there's a little note inside there. It says, keep on keeping on. And so I just buckled down and got through. I finally made it to Dean's List when I was firstie. It took me several semesters to get there, but I got through it. So
that's awesome persistence, and kudos to your parents for not coddling, wanting to, oh, my poor baby, come home, we'll make it okay.
No.
That they said, suck it up and let's get going.
I shared this at a thing I spoke at the other day. The worst thing you can do is deny your kids an opportunity for grit. It is the worst thing you can do, because they are going to need that in the future, and you have to give them the opportunity to earn their own grit.
Amen. Well, you make it through the Air Force Academy. Graduation, where'd you go, like first active duty assignment?
First assignment was there at the Air Force Academy. I stayed on and worked at the Center for Character Development and Leadership. So I spent a year on special assignment there, and at the time we were working through sexual assault awareness programs, and really how to help the wing. Women were new on the wing, you would think, but we had actually been there 20 years at that point. And so there was still, but we were only representing probably 7 or 8% of the cadets at that time.
And today it's 20?
It's like 27% was what I saw just a few years ago. I don't know where they're kind of leveling out year over year, but critical mass now, right? I mean, you're reaching a much higher density, which is supportive of the data that says you need that in order to feel like you have good support around you. And so I worked for a year on that program, and then I entered into as a contracts officer at Langley Air Force Base. So
did you go back and get advanced degrees during your time when you were a contract officer?
So once I actually went back after I had separated from the Air Force, and I was working on the base at Air Combat Command in the capacity. At that time, they had these, what they call A-76 positions. So you could work on the base. So I worked at Air Combat Command out of uniform, but as an embedded contractor. And I had government authority to do the POM at that time, and went to get my master's degree at William & Mary.
Okay, William & Mary. So how many years did you go before you ended up transitioning off of active duty?
Yeah, so it was only about 4 years. So we did an early out. This was before 9/11, so did an early out right at my 4-year mark. So I didn't get all the way to my 5, but was able to transition right across the base out of the 1st Contracting Squadron over to what they call ACEs and 8s to A8, and did requirements there. I worked for several companies, so you would have a job, the companies would bid for that job. But my last company, there was a company called Cytor, and they were an amazing culture company. And so we worked on the base. We worked right alongside of folks defining requirements for F-16s, for F-35s and F-22s were brand new back then. We were defining requirements for them. I learned a ton from the guys, and it was guys all at that time who had put together tactics, techniques, and procedures for various aircraft. And so we were kind of writing those in to the aircraft for the F-22 and F-35. It was a really great time of growth for me to sit with these folks, and I don't want to call them elders, but sit with folks who had years and years of experience of how we did combat. And I built requirements as a result, and it was a lot of fun. And I don't know if we're going to get into it in this segment, but I also started working on an ice cream business on the side. So we were doing a lot of things all at once.
Well, you know what? One of my favorite food groups is ice cream. I want to hear this story.
It's at the top of the pyramid for me.
It's at the top of the pyramid. But let's get into more of the personal story, your journey. Okay, you separate from the Air Force. You're in this 6-year period. You work for Air Combat Command. Then what?
So I met my husband there at Langley. And so Jim, who, look, there is no way that I could do the job or have had the career that I've had without his support. I mean, he has absolutely been, everything in order to make it possible for me to do this. And Jim was a single dad of 3 kids when we met, so I call him my package deal. And so those 3 kids are my kids. They're now in their 30s. We've got 6 grandkids amongst them. We had tried to have a kiddo of our own. It took about 6.5 years, and we said, you know what, this is just, it's too stressful. It's wearing on all of us emotionally. And so we kind of set that aside and said, okay, these are the kids God gave me. I'm going to pour my life into these 3. And so we started the ice cream business. And I was still working on the base full time. Jim at this point had retired from the Air Force. And we opened up some Cold Stone Creamery there in Williamsburg, Virginia. And so Jim was working, 7 days a week up there. He was the front of the business, doing the maintenance and the sales and running the shop. And I was doing everything at night after I'd come home from working at Langley. And so I'd be up till 2 a.m. doing accounting and, marketing and, whatever else goes along with just kind of keeping a business going. And then one day I didn't feel so great. And I was like, I think I might be pregnant. He's like, oh, don't do that. You get so upset and sad when you're not. And so I came out and I was crying, and he knew it was a different cry. And he put the pillow over his face and he said, does God not know I'm 44? So he says, look, I think we got to probably sell the business. You need to stop drinking wine and get on some vitamins. And so at that point, we put the ice cream business up for sale. It took us a couple years to sell it. And Textron at that time, actually, the door was open that they approached me about coming to be a business development manager. So we sold the business. I entered into my role at Textron, and Jim became a full-time stay-at-home dad at that point. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Your whole life is just, it's one of tenacity, to your point, grit, and stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah.
That's, you gotta write a book about that at some point in time. When it's all said and done, you still got a few more chapters to write.
Yeah.
But, kind of the motivation then to go to Textron, other than it was just the next gig, it kind of popped up. How'd that happen?
So there was a gentleman named Mark Rafferty who I had met at Langley when I was working at Air Combat Command, who really kind of taught me when I referenced about the guys that would share with me about what, tactics and techniques and procedures and why you would have certain weapon systems paired with certain aircraft. And so Mark had actually moved on to this company called Textron, and he had been such an important mentor to me. He's the one who encouraged me to go get my master's degree. He was the one who I think candidly had more confidence and belief in me than I did in myself at that time. He was second father for sure. And so I called Mark and I said, hey, tell Betsy, great news. Jim and I are finally pregnant. And I said, we've sold the ice cream businesses and, we're looking to do something different. I can't just stay here at ACC and keep doing the POM year after year. And he said, well, what do you think about business development? Why don't you come up? Have you ever lived in New England? Let's give that a try. And so I was 7 months pregnant, kind of waddling around, interviewing for this job with Textron, which was a high travel job, all men in the department. And so I trusted that Mark had my best interest, and we made the leap, and that's how we ended up there.
Wow, what a journey. And then, along the way, from the influence that athletics had on you, going from high school to the academy, and continued there, lessons learned that you were picking up along the way that became this individual that became passionate about developing culture.
Yeah.
Developing culture. So kind of where did that come from, and how did those influences, and was it through books or was it through just watching and mentorship of others?
I would say both, right? I read a ton. I really do. In fact, in 2023, I tried to read a book a week. And candidly, I probably did more audio than actual physical brick and mortar books. But I think that if you stop being curious, then you might as well hang it up, right? Curiosity, as long as you're continuing to learn, that helps you feed into ways into your culture building, that you want to have people that want to work together. Being on a team, being on a basketball team takes 5 people to win on the floor, and probably takes 9 people, because you got to have 4 on the bench that you're willing to go to that are going to back you up. So knowing that you have the core on the floor that are trusting each other, able to pass a ball without even looking sometimes, and knowing that you've got somebody there that's willing to come and give you a break when you need one, when you need a respite, when you need a chance to just say, whew. And so in life, that's really important, right? You got to know that you got people that are going to step in for you and support you. So I think that culture there, then take that into the military, and you experience this just like I did. There's days where you didn't want to be standing up, at attention, getting yelled at. But if I knew that I had Dan Leone and Rick Dwyer on my side, hockey player, football player on each side of me, shoulder to shoulder as I'm getting chewed out, helping me remember whatever that silly quote was that I had to remember. Knowing I had those two guys on my side, I could do it, right? I mean, it just, you learn through life the things, it's never just what you do. It's surrounding yourself with people that are willing to be there for you, that you trust. And I just always want to try to be that person for other people. And I think that's attractive. I think it's, people want to be around people that are willing to behave that way.
And to elevate others.
Yeah.
Amen.
So you just keep, that's the tagline that we've unveiled at Bell this year is elevate what matters. And so, yeah.
I'm a marketing consultant. Yeah. I'm too late. I don't get paid for that. Go ahead.
No,
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, that's it, right? I mean, you got to elevate what matters. You got to elevate each other. Of course, at Bell, we fly, tote rotors, helicopters, things that elevate off the ground. So it's a nice little quick play, but I think that's the core of it, right? You elevate to the surface what matters.
You come across as an individual who is intentional, is proactive, setting goals. Did you set the goal to be CEO of Bell Flight?
Yeah, no.
Let's just talk about the journey and kind of milestones along the way.
So the little secret I've always had is I try to do a 5-year plan. And I actually my pastor at our church actually just encouraged my husband and I to put together a 10-year plan. But I always try to have a 5-year plan and what that looks like, both what I want to accomplish personally, professionally, with family. And I've never once, fully achieved whatever that 5 years is, but it gives you a target and it gives you kind of an objective to move after. And so knowing that I've had targets have just kind of ordered my steps to go in the right direction, and it's just opened up things. I've shared about being snacko. If you're snacko, and for those that don't know, if the snack officer, you want to make sure you've got the best snacks in the squadron out there for people to buy, so that you got a really good, kiddie in the pool for a Christmas party. Be the best snacko, because when you're the best snacko, then they're going to say, I'm going to trust you to go run this little project. Well, then you run that project and crush it. And then they say, okay, well, how about we let you run this program? Okay, then you crush that. And then they come to you and they say, hey, how would you like to go lead, the sales with weapons over in this foreign country? Then you go lead that. And then they say, how about we let you go lead all of this area of weapons? Then they let you go. So it's just kind of always been this, just really crush the target in front of you. Others are going to notice that, and they're going to want to be a part of that with you to give you that next thing.
I can totally relate too, because I've been often asked a question, did you set out to be like an All-American football player or whatever? It's like, no. I had to be the best D lineman that I could be at that particular moment. Yeah. You remind me of another story too. I was just, first year with the Cowboys, I didn't see the field for the first 8 games. I was inactive, dressed in my civilian clothes, standing on the sidelines. And I went from being, that guy at the academy to now I'm picking my nose, on the sidelines. And I went up to Coach Johnson. I just said, Coach, I'll do whatever it takes just to get on the field. I'll play special teams. Yeah. And that's where he, my size, my guy, running down kickoffs and doing punt, whatever to get on the field and be the best at that, gave opportunities to others. So, I totally relate, totally relate. So you're continue to climb the corporate ladder. Then you get into the C-suite leadership position. You kind of look around and say, how did I make it here?
For sure. Yeah, and climbing the ladder. Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, has a really good chapter in there about this. Sometimes it's not the ladder, and they don't have a lot of jungle gyms around anymore, but sometimes it's the jungle gym. And I had a couple of steps along the way that weren't actually linear. I took this job, and then I actually took a demotion from vice president to director just to get a different experience so that I could go learn a different part of the business. And that was scary. That's the one that actually brought us from the Northeast down to Texas. So we lifted our family up, and Bell had called and said, hey, we want you to come down here. And they called it a director of operations, but at the time I was the vice president of area attack weapons, which is a really cool business card. But I was running this big group, and I came here to be an individual contributor, working for this guy, Mitch Snyder. And Mitch was like, hey, I'm going to teach you the ropes at Bell, and you're just going to have to come down here and learn your lessons, and we'll figure this out. And so we moved across the country. And, at that, it really reminded me of the fact that you have to be able to be open to different opportunities. When it feels like you should be climbing the ladder this way. It wasn't in my 5-year plan to move to Texas and go sideways. But I took a risk on a guy who believed in me, and he ultimately became the CEO at Bell and pulled me along with him to run all the military business. That got the eye and attention of corporate. And so I had only been doing this job running the military business for about 16, 17 months. And Scott Donnelly kind of tapped me on the shoulder and he said, hey, I need you to come over and be the CEO at Textron Systems. Will you do that? It's really one of those questions at the time. My family, Hayden had been in 3 different elementary schools, and they were going to want me to move back to the East Coast. And I didn't want to move him yet again to another school. And I had just moved my parents to Texas. My dad had lived in Florida for like over 73 years, and they were literally in boxes still. And I said, I'll do the job if I can do it here from Texas and work. We have a group that is out at Alliance Field. And it was the first time in my career that I didn't just jump in and say, yep, whatever you asked me to do. I asked for something for myself in that because I really thought it was important for my family. And the corporation said, yeah, do that. And so I was on the road in that job probably 3-4 days a week, flying all around to the different businesses inside Textron Systems, but allowed my family to stay here in Texas. And it was fantastic. Then they said, hey, Mitch is going to retire from Bell. We want you to come over and be the CEO of Bell. So then I'm like, holy wow. I mean, how did this happen? And so it has been moments where I sit in places. I was in the White House, and I was representing as the CEO, and I had this thought to myself then of never let the extraordinary become ordinary, because it's really, I get to do some extraordinary things. And if you start taking that for granted, start getting entitled, start feeling like, oh, I'm CEO, that's when it starts to lose its shine a little bit. I really want to be just in awe every day of the fact that I get to do this. And I am. I'm just in awe.
What I admire just listening to you is this aspect. You have a strong sense of self-awareness, self-recognition to truly evaluate yourself. And that's unusual, particularly, I would say, in the C-suite individuals. I mean, not to have the ego, to be willing to make, take a risk, a lateral move, if not, motion to increase your awareness and who you are, increase your skill set, and then, at times put family first to take that risk and not pursue that. That's, I applaud you in that regard.
Chad, I really think I'm very crystal clear in my identity. I know who I am, and I'm first a child of God. I'm second Jim's wife, and I'm third, Hayden, Melissa, Matthew, and Brian's mom. I mean, then I'm the CEO of Bell. I mean, I really just know who I am.
We're going to get into that in the next segment. You're right on target. But you're also very competitive.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's comes through too. And Bell has won a contract with U.S. military, the Army. Yeah. We have some West Pointers in the crowd here today. We'll speak slower for them. Just tease it, John.
Single syllable.
Single syllable word. No, but you competed with the big dogs. Sikorsky, who's had the contract forever with the Apache, and then with when Boeing too. Yeah. How did you go about competing for that, building the culture within Bell that, hey, we can do this? Yeah.
So I mentioned Mitch Snyder earlier. So we started working on this project back in 2012, and it was we tried to have an environment at Bell that first off was underestimate me, that'll be fun, right? I mean, it was just very much we are going to win. There was never ever a thought, I believe, that we thought we'd lose. We just had this belief in ourselves that this was going to happen. We had the right product, we had the right people. And one of the things in that culture was we try to create an environment where we get to listen to everyone's input. You can start getting a little arrogant in the company when you start feeling like, I know all the answers. As an organization, we know better than you. We hired a lot of former Army aviators, a lot of former Army maintainers, a lot of chief warrant officers, and we brought them in and just were like, just tell us what we're missing. Tell us what you'd love to have more of in the Army that you don't have today with these products. And really took all of that information and advice and produced what you see now as the winner. And I think when you have a culture of transparency, of openness, of willingness to listen, curiosity, and people really got empowered by that because they felt like they were being heard. And then it created even a better environment that says, oh, wait, before you do that, think about this too. Oh, sure, I'll do that. And then you get speed because you're not having to go through the bureaucracy of, we'll do this, then we'll do this. And no, we'd all come together, put our arms around and say, okay, we're going to get after this. Okay, move to the next thing. I think the last thing that really helped us win was the Army trusted us. I mean, the Army realized that we were listening to what they wanted. The contract got protested after we won. And one of the big things that the Army asked for was modular open systems architecture. They want to be able to not have what they call vendor lock, where when they want to put something new on the aircraft, they got to come back through the same old contractor and it cost a ton. And they wanted, and the engineers love when I use this analogy, they really don't, but they wanted like your iPhone where I go to the app store and I want this. It doesn't mean that Apple actually designed that app. Somebody else designed it, but it operates on your iPhone. The Army wanted that flexibility in their weapon system, and that's what we gave them, and willingly, and said, we understand you're not going to come back through us, but we know that's what the warfighter needs. And so that's why they picked us.
That's a lot of entrepreneurs when they open source on coding.
Sure.
It's like what's going on in
Sure.
the AI world today. Disruptive aspects of more collaboration, more people, and not necessarily trying to control that. Yeah. It just allows that ingenuity, integrative, innovative thinking and thought process.
Yeah.
Okay, before we take this ice break, pick up on this piece where you alluded a little bit before, developing talent, establishing that pipeline. How are you going about doing that at Bell?
Yeah, so we do a lot, all the way down to high school, right? We bring in high school interns, we have major internship programs. The reality is people want to be with the winners. And the fact that we won that program also, we had over 18,000 applicants for our 225 internship slots this past year. People just see what we're doing in terms of the culture that we've created, in terms of the products that we produce. But I think more than anything else, people like sharing with others about the innovation that we've got going on. We have a very specific leadership development pipeline that we put people through too. But word of mouth with winning the contract has been a big piece of it. But being intentional of the schools that we go to, both locally to the high school and at the college level, of sharing with folks, doing a lot of pipeline training with different universities of, hey, work on these projects with us, has been key to it as well.
That's awesome. Building leadership pipelines. One of the things in any individual that is a strong leader has a strong sense of identity and purpose. For me, I kind of define excellence as having that strong, defined identity, and then living each day with a sense of character, integrity, and purpose. It's a higher calling. It's not about us. It's about building up individuals, which you've alluded to that all the time. And for me, it's, specifically to define identity, it's having that filter. It's having that strong sense of identity, of purpose that, your thoughts, your words, all your experiences go through this filter, and that's what provides, that meaning, purpose, and impact in your life. Now, for our audience, again, if they just pick it up right now, who is Lisa?
Yeah. So, as I said earlier, I really understand, and I didn't start here on day one. This has been evolved over my life, but I know who I am, and that helps me with my decision quality. I know, first, I'm a child of God. Second, I'm Jim's wife. Third, I'm Hayden, Matthew, Melissa, and Brian's mom. And then fourth, I get to be the CEO of this amazing company. It doesn't mean that there's big separation between them. They're all very closely and tightly aligned. But it's so freeing because I know that someday I'm not going to be the CEO of Bell. And so when that happens, I'm always going to be, my kid's mom, my husband's wife, and I'm always going to be a child of God. So, the fact that I have that security, it helps defeat any kind of insecurity that I might feel in the job. And so it helps me make good decisions because I'm not worried about who I am. It just focuses me.
I've talked with multiple individuals that have made a transition from either active duty military, professional athletics, into the corporate world, or from being a C-suite founder of a business and now, retired, sold their business. And I asked them that question as I asked you, who are you? And many times they'll say, I'm so-and-so, I'm a former F-16 fighter pilot, or I'm a former defensive tech. I go, that's what you do.
Yeah.
What you do does not define who you are.
That's right.
Right? And what I appreciate about you too is that your aspect of humility, of not letting the shiny object, let it always have that sense of awe and purpose.
Yeah.
How do you go about kind of keeping yourself honest in that regard? Do you have, I'll call it wingmen? Yeah. Who are those influences in your life that say, okay, Lisa, you're not all that?
Yeah, for sure. My husband reminds me regularly. No, and I mentioned him earlier, right? He does keep me 100% grounded. And we just kind of live our life in a way that we keep each other in check, and that makes it. He's my best friend. He's just, and I bounce things off of him, and I say, what does this mean? What do you think about this? And so we have that constant communication. And I've shared with folks, as you're moving into that picking your spouse, choose wisely, because that person needs to be able to hold you accountable and keep you grounded. I've also got some girlfriends that are also pretty powerful in their respective fields, but also have the same outlook on life as I do as far as our faith. And we meet regularly and share with each other concerns and prayer requests, and cry on each other's shoulders when it feels like it's just so overwhelming, or our kids are going through some things and we just need somebody to talk to. So yeah, they are my wingmen. I think that they're honest. And I think that's the thing, is you don't want friends that aren't going to tell you when you're wrong. You got to have those people that are going to say, no, you're misinterpreting that, or you're wrong on this. You need to be, rethinking that. And it just keeps you grounded.
You had alluded to before that you're in an industry where there's not too many females. Pretty much male-dominated industry. And you got there because you earned it. Meritocracy. Take this wherever you want. A softball question to you. What kind of our country and our culture of our nation is kind of struggling a little bit with right now, the whole DEI CRT piece.
Sure.
And meritocracy. You grew up as an athlete. You had to earn your starting position. At the academy, you had to earn your nomination to be able to graduate. In the Air Force, you had to earn, and as well as at Textron and Bell, earn your positions.
Yeah.
Where do you see this whole aspect of balance of giving people opportunity, but it's not guaranteeing the outcome?
Yeah, I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. I think, first off, you have to be the right person for the job. You have to have I could not walk out on the Cowboys field and say to Coach Johnson, can I go out and get on there and be on special teams? I couldn't. I don't have the skills. I don't have the talent. I don't have the ability. It doesn't matter what gender at that point. I just couldn't do it. So you got to have the talent, ability, and skills for whatever the job or task is in front of you. That said, early days when I was, business development and I was selling weapons, and there were only a handful of women, we went to a conference down at Eglin Air Force Base, down in the Panhandle of Florida, and there's probably 800 people in the audience, and probably only 8 to 10 women in that entire audience. And the first 3 speakers that day, the first lady ran the NDIA, which is a trade group for the government. The second lady her name was Judy Stokely. She was the deputy PEO, or program executive officer for weapons. And the third speaker of the day was Sue Payton, who happened to be the head of acquisition for Air Force at that time. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'm just a low-level manager in BD. The first 3 speakers of the day were women. highly qualified, incredibly competent, knew their stuff inside and out, and everybody's sitting there taking notes down of everything that they said. Chad, it never occurred to me until that meeting that I actually could do more than just be a manager of business development. So I do think that having somebody to look up to, having representation of somebody who's highly qualified, can be inspiring and can tell a young lady, go for it, shoot for the stars, you can do this. I mean, the reason I got into basketball, Pat Summitt was like the icon of basketball. I mean, sure. I wanted to play University of Tennessee. Not that good, but but having somebody to look up to and aspire to be is important no matter what race, gender, but to have somebody that you feel like you can identify with, I think is important. And so I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. I think you can be a really kick butt CEO and also, by the way, be a girl. So
living proof right here. I think another one of your strong aspects is the aspect of self-awareness. But, what are your strengths and your weaknesses? What do you do well? And what are you currently working on to try to improve?
Yeah, look, I think for me, I'm always working on time management, always. It is constantly a struggle for me because there's just so many things that I'm juggling. And that's not just in the business. I've got a son who's a senior in high school, who's about to graduate. So I'm thinking, okay, I got to get senior photographs done because I got to plan a graduation party, and we got to figure out what we're going to do in this fall. And I've got a dad who's going to have a surgery on Monday, and so how do I help with my parents for that? And so I think for me, it's always just trying to make sure that I manage my time well, so that I serve all those things that I claim to have in the right priorities. And then it sounds so silly. John Garrison, who was the CEO at Bell before Mitch, and I meet regularly, also a West Point guy, but John, and a football player, actually, by the way. John and I were having coffee, and he's like, Lisa, do not underestimate the power of sleep. He's like, you better make sure you take care of yourself and your body and exercise. And he's like, because it only gets harder as the stress gets to be more. So, I mean, it sounds pretty fundamental, but I'm always working on making sure that I take care of that. Because if I'm not good in those areas, I'm not making good, high quality decisions because my brain is frazzled. And so I think it's just a constant thing that I'm working on.
Have you ever struggled with the aspect of, you're so busy. I mean, you're running a Fortune 500 company with Hayden and your family being home with your husband, being there physically, but you're thinking mentally, you're thinking about, okay, a board meeting coming up, or, we got a contract coming up, or I've got this issue with HR to deal with.
If I had a nickel for the number of times that Jim said, hey, are you listening to me? Because I'm on my phone, or, I could buy some more purses. But I do. I have a lot of guilt with that, of making sure that I'm present. I talk all the time about the myth of work-life balance just does not exist. It is work-life integration, and you have got to really focus on making sure that you're fully present in the moment that you're in. So if I am in a board meeting, or if I am in a decision meeting at work, I need to not be thinking about the fact that I've got to get done with work and get to Hayden's XYZ. But if I'm at home, or if I'm at one of his games, or if I'm at dinner with my family, I need to also put the phone aside and focus on being there. And it's not always been easy for me. And this is where we talked about Jim keeping me grounded. When Hayden was in second grade, he was playing t-ball. He might have been coach pitch at the time, but I had gotten off the airplane. They had picked me up from the airport, and I'm on the phone. I'm trying to get some aircraft delivered, and it's all messed up. And Hayden was trying to tell me a story about his practice. And I'm doing the And Jim slapped the phone out of my hand. And he was like, your son's trying to talk to you. Ooh, I'm going to get choked up. He was trying to tell me that day they were supposed to run the bases at the end of practice, and one of the boys tripped and fell, and Hayden turned around and went back and ran with him so that he wasn't the last one across the plate. And his coach gave him such high praise for being a kid of such, oh man, we're going to have to edit this. and I completely missed it. My kid had a seminal moment of being a person of kindness, and I was in my phone. I'll never do it again. Ooh, sorry.
No, you're good. Oh, I'm getting off the cliff here too.
Yeah. Stay focused on your kids. There's the message.
No, it is.
Because it happens in a blink. He's going to go off in the fall.
It is relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships
Yeah.
matter. And no, amen. You've also mentioned how important your faith is
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
Can I just share a little bit about what, spiritually, what that gives you as far as the balance, who you are,
Yeah.
et cetera, regarding identity and
Sure.
just your outlook?
Yeah, look, it's comforting to know that there's an eternal purpose, right? So I think knowing that we're, well, one, uniquely designed, right? I think there's some of that where I struggled for a little while about what is my purpose? Why am I here? What is this for? And then really diving in and trying to understand, it's actually pretty simple, right? I mean, we're here to be a light, to shine, His goodness and grace each and every day. And if you can just stay focused on that, and then you can decide, did you win or lose that day in your purpose? I think my faith has also given me confidence to know that the problems are not that big, right? I mean, I have got somebody that I can turn it over to who can give me wisdom and discernment to solve for those problems. And it's comforting and helpful to me to know that I don't have to do this alone. I don't have to feel like I've always got to be in control because I am a bit wired that way to be a person of control. And, and just to know that He's already done it, right? The victory is won. And so I'm just supposed to make the impact I make in this life. And I'm blessed to be able to do it. I mean, I could ramble on, Chad, about it.
No, and I hear you. And I just, what you've been able to accomplish as far as Air Force Academy graduate, business development manager for Textron, now CEO. But ultimately, those accomplishments, I hear in your heart and your voice, so what?
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
You're wife to Jim,
Yep.
you're a mother, and it's those relationships that, as well as your employees, your friendships, your
Yeah.
relationships,
Yeah.
the 8,000 plus employees
Yeah.
at Bell that you're leading, that means more.
Yes.
That's the legacy that, I'll just fall on that question then. What is your legacy then that you feel at the end of your days when you retire? What is a legacy that you have written?
So I'll come back to Mark Rafferty, right? So Mark has passed on. Mark died in 2020. And Mark is the one who had the confidence in me, who brought me to Textron, who really inspired me. And he lived a life of selflessness. He lived a life of just belief. And he just wanted to give to everyone around him to make them better. So that when they went home that day, they just felt like they learned something from him. He sponsored me when I wasn't even in the room for other jobs and for other roles. I always have felt like he was just really such a good person for everyone around him. I would like to be remembered that way. I'd like to know that I opened the door and created a pathway for others behind me, and that I did a good job along the way, making sure that they've got a broader path. So,
okay. What would you want to say? Feel free to speak directly to the camera. Put the pressure on you.
Yeah.
No, if you could speak to your younger self or to a young lady out there that aspires to follow your footsteps into your path, what would you tell them?
Work hard, believe in yourself, make sure that you surround yourself with wingmen or wingwomen that are going to make sure that they hold you accountable to what you say you're going to do, and know that at the end of the day, Jesus has got you.
Amen. Amen.
Right.
Well, hey, I thank you for being here. You've inspired me. I'm going to go home and share this with the family, and I look forward to this edition being released here soon. But again, thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching, if you like the content that you've seen here today, follow us on social media. And if you want to learn more about this podcast, tune to my website, chadhennings.com. I Appreciate you watching this, and I encourage each and every one of you, get out there and be a force of character.